Everybody, thank you for coming today. Gerrymandering obviously is a topic that is of great concern to everyone, and again with this recent election, that issue has come to the fore once more. It's not a new issue. And so we've invited a speaker to talk to us today about political gerrymandering and whether or not reform is possible. So let me just give you some of the bona fides for our wonderful speaker today. This is Benji Cover, who studied engineering, mathematics, and economics. He's got an unusual background at the University of Toronto, international development at the London School of Economics, and then law at Yale. And yeah, so pretty terrific qualified. During law school, he was a submissions editor for the Yale Journal of Law and Feminism. So really broad background. Student director of the San Francisco Affirmative Litigation Project and a participant in the Prisoner Legal Services Clinic. He also founded a nonprofit organization called 24 Hours for Darfur. On graduation, he joined the Public Defender's Office in New Orleans, where he handled misdemeanor and felony cases in municipal and state court. He developed a client services division and worked on special litigation. Excuse me. He then served as a legislative director for the New Orleans City Council member LaToya Cantrell, and he focused there with her on policy issues including neighborhood revitalization, land use, economic development, immigration, health, education, criminal justice reform, and political reform. He's got this broad background that he brings to us. He's also got lots of awards and honors. I won't go into those. Lots of he's been a fellow in various capacities. So with that, please help me welcome Benjamin Cover.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and thanks to all of you for being here and for your patience as we got all our tech set up. It's a real honor for me to speak to the Moscow League of Women Voters. This is my third year living in Moscow. My wife and I both teach at the University of Idaho in the College of Law. My wife focuses on criminal justice topics, and I teach a course on election law, legislative process, the federal courts, and the First Amendment, which is good. We're going to talk about all of those things today. We're going to talk about gerrymandering. You know, we've learned over the last 3 years that Moscow is a really special place, and so it's really great to be talking to the Moscow League of Women Voters. Also, as somebody who studies election law, the League of Women Voters has played a central role in electoral reform for a very long time and continues to play a role in electoral reform today. Some of the litigation I'm going to be talking to you about, the lead plaintiff in the North Carolina case is the Moscow League, not the Moscow League of Women Voters, is the League of Women Voters in North Carolina. And so for both of those reasons, I'm really excited to be talking to you all here at the Moscow League of Women Voters. So I'm going to talk to you today about gerrymandering. And you know, what I'm going to try to do is present the problem and then discuss with you different possible ways that we might address it. And gerrymandering is funny because it's a really powerful term. We all use this term gerrymandering, but we don't often have a really precise definition for it or an exact understanding of precisely how it operates. And if we can't define it precisely, it's really hard to figure out how to test for it, how to cure for it, right? So the way that I'm going to start is let's try to define exactly what we mean when we talk about gerrymandering, right? And let's try to think about the context in which it arises. So I've got a few things going on here. I've got a little map here, and I'm going to use this as kind of a toy model of a state, right? So this is just a simple state. It's just a square, right? And each circle represents a certain number of voters. And I have divided, I've color-coded my voters. So some are pink and some are green. I use pink and green because I don't want to use red and blue. You know, we very, very strongly associate red and blue with our political parties today, right? Do you all know why we associate red and blue with Republican and Democrat, respectively?
News show.
No, it is the way that the media has color-coded electoral maps for us when they're presenting election results on election day. But they didn't always color-code it where red meant Republican and blue meant Democrat. They used to switch it up every election. And it just so happened that in 2000, it happened to be the time when they were using red for Republican and blue for Democrat. And then we had the contested presidential election, Bush v. Gore. And for 6 weeks, everybody was waiting to see how who the Supreme Court was going to choose as our next president. And everyone was staring at TV screens that had red for Republican and blue for Democrat. And after those 6 weeks, we now just very strongly associate red means Republican and blue means Democrat, right? So I try not to use those colors. I also try not to use those colors because we're going to see that with gerrymandering, you can slice and dice jurisdictions in a way that doesn't just disfavor a party, but it could also disfavor any group. It could disfavor a racial group, right? You could gerrymander in a way that dilute the power of African American voters or a group of Latino voters in Texas. And so you could also gerrymander in a way that favors voters not on the basis of party, not on the basis of race, but on a geographical factor. Like you could favor rural areas over urban areas, or urban areas over rural areas, right? And so I think it's helpful to just think about, you know, two colors, green and purple, that aren't really closely associated with any of these things. Because it's more general than that. We could do this to favor any group. And I'm going to start off by just teaching you all how to gerrymander. Do you all know how to gerrymander? Yeah? You know how to gerrymander? Okay, so let's learn how to gerrymander, right? The first thing we need to do to gerrymander is we have to make a decision that we are going to use districts for our elections, right? Do we have to use electoral districts? Does the Constitution require that we use electoral districts? The Constitution doesn't say anything about it. It says nothing about it. And not every country does, right? Most countries, particularly in Europe, they use systems of proportional representation, where there are no electoral districts. And so this is how it would work if we were in a country that used a system of proportional representation. We wouldn't draw any districts at all. I'm assuming this is a state, and we're choosing the legislature for this state. And let's say there's 100 seats in the state legislature. We have one election for the entire square, and I'm going to assume that 55% of voters would vote for the party preferred, the Green Party, the party preferred by those Green voters, and the other 45% would vote for the party preferred by the Group A voters, right? And that's exactly what the representation would be in the legislature. The Green Party would get 55% of the seats, and the Pink Party would get 45% of the seats. That's how a system of proportional representation works, right? If you look at the U.S. Constitution, it doesn't say anything about whether or not we should use proportional representation. It doesn't say you have to. It doesn't say you can't. It doesn't say you have to use districts. It doesn't say you can use districts. Right? Sorry, it doesn't say that you're not allowed to. It doesn't say that you must. What it says is that in each state, the state is going to determine the time, place, and manner of the election. And uniformly, since the beginning of the United States, the choice that most states have made is to draw districts. And so instead of just having one election for the whole square, what they do is they divide it up into a bunch of little districts. And then each district has its own little election, right? And so what this looks like, you draw a little district like that, and then you draw another district like that, and then another district like that. Now the simplest way to do this is called a single member system, where each district chooses one representative and they get one seat in the legislature, right? That's the way that most states choose their legislatures, their state legislatures. It's also the way that most states choose their congressional representatives, right? Now for state legislatures, state legislative bodies might have, you could have 100 legislators, some states have 200 or 300 legislators. For congressional representatives, it's usually one state has a much smaller number of representatives, right? So Idaho has 2. If this was Idaho, and I was drawing districts to choose our 2 congressional representatives for Idaho. I have to just draw 2 rectangles, 2 squares, because we only have 2 representatives, right? Now, there's a couple different ways I could do it, right? I could do one like this. Oh, I'm sorry. So I need to go like this, right? Is that better? Okay, I'm sorry. So I can do one like this and one like that, right? That's one way. Or I could do one like this and one like that. That's another one, right? Okay. Now, do you all know where the term gerrymander comes from? Yeah, exactly. It's a combination of the word, it's a combination of 2 words, right? One is salamander, and one is Gerry. Is that, yeah, Elbridge Gerry. And who was Elbridge Gerry?
He was from Virginia?
Massachusetts. He was the governor of Massachusetts, and then he was the vice president of the United States. But nobody remembers that. The only thing they remember about him is this term gerrymander. Let me show you. Okay, so this is the original gerrymander. Where the term comes from is, so it's a combination of 2 words. One is the word salamander, and the other is the word Gerry. And what happened is, in 1812, when Elbridge Gerry was the governor of Massachusetts, for some reason, some politicians decided to change all the districts for Massachusetts Senate. And they drew the districts in a way that kind of looked funny. And then somebody published a critique of the governor in the Boston Gazette. And they said, look at how funny these districts look, it kind of looks like a salamander. And they called it the gerrymander, suggesting that there's some funny shape going on, and there's a politician behind it who's manipulating things, right? That's what the term gerrymander means. And actually, people have started to use the term, they've started different variations on the term. So when Governor Rick Perry was the governor of Texas, and Texas started changing the way that it drew lines, people started calling it a Perrymander, criticizing Governor Perry for manipulating the districts, right? Now, it's a really powerful term. It kind of captures our visceral reaction to the idea that there's a politician manipulating our democracy. But it's kind of a, it's an imprecise term, right? And it usually makes us think a gerrymander is a funny shape. A gerrymander is not necessarily a funny shape. It could be, but not necessarily. I just did some gerrymanders. They were just little rectangles, right? The reason that mine were little rectangles is because the geographic pattern of where people live was really simple. And so I didn't have to draw any funny shapes, right? And I think you all now know what you need in order to gerrymander. Do you guys want to try it yourselves? Let's make it a little more complicated, okay? Idaho's a small state, there's only 2 congressional districts, so you can only just draw a line, right? Let's make it more complicated, 10 congressional districts, right? And this is like an average size state in the United States, right? Congress has 435 members of the House, there's 50 states, so each, some states are big, some states are small, but let's say that you have a state that looks, I'll go back to this. And now, I think I need to close the PowerPoint in order for you to see. I'll just close the PowerPoint. Let's go back to our map. Okay. Let's draw it. Okay. Okay. So now we're going to draw 10 congressional districts. And this is more like a state like North Carolina, where it's not just 2, it's going to be more like 10. North Carolina actually has 13. Okay. And North Carolina Now let's think in terms of party, right? In North Carolina, it's pretty close. It's about an even split between Republicans and Democrats. It's probably like a 45-55 split, right?